was given the President's Award from the SER this past weekend. That's a really, really prestigious award. So yay, go Walt.
Thank you.
All that hard work. We also had one of our other members got the Chairman's Award, Scott Tadla. So, you know, we're well represented in the SER. You got to hear Scott?
I don't know if he's online with us or not.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
There he is. Okay.
You're welcome. I thought I heard him. Mike Cummings is the secretary once again. The elections were done. And also, Randall Watson has become a director again. So we're represented very well on the board, too. So anyway, we have some interesting stuff going on. Charlie, I know I was going to read this for you, but I think as long as you're here, why don't you explain what your contests are going to be? Charlie Mason? You're on mute.
Yeah. We will be having a virtual photo contest this fall. Jim Dacta is in charge of the contest. He's working out the details, and messages with all the details will go out to all the members about how to enter. Send your JPEGs to Jim. But there will be a photo contest this fall. There will not be a model contest this fall, but we are working on developing a model contest for early 2021. If we're not meeting back at the church in person, we're going to set up some type of drive-in model contest where anybody that has a model that they want judged for MER awards will be able to bring it to us. We'll have a team of judges on a certain date, certain location. You bring your models to us. We'll go through the judging process, take photos, and then at the next Piedmont Division meeting, we'll announce the winners, all those who received MER awards, and show photographs of the models.
It sounds like it'll be fun.
Well, we hope that this will be something that will be of interest to the membership. So, you're participating in this meeting. Start working on your models for in the next several months, and after the first of the year, we'll send you out the details of how we're going to run this model contest.
Okay. So the photo contest, the last date, I just looked it up, is going to be October 12th that you can submit. That's the day before our next meeting. So you need to get a hold of Jim Dacta and find out how to go ahead and send things to him. Another note, the pilgrimage is coming along. We're doing it virtually this year, as you well know by now. They've gotten quite a few done. Mike Deaton, do you want to add anything to that?
We're got a couple more months to go. We're about 80% plus. We've got the videos in. We got 40% are actually we're doing the finishing touches of openings and closings and credits and stuff to get. We're going to start posting hopefully the schedule of when the videos will appear in the next week or two, I hope, and then we'll be starting obviously on Saturday, October 31st, and wrapping up on Sunday, November 22nd. So it'll be 5 or 6 videos a day. We'll watch.
It'll be great. The video that they did of mine is wonderful. I mean, the editing and everything, it's like 15 minutes long, and it's worth every minute to watch. It's got my live streamer in it, too, so it's fun stuff. I wanted to go over a few of the things that are coming up. It's been mentioned already. The NMRX, Ask the MMR, that's this Saturday. That's online at the NMRA's website. Let's see. There's a Northeast region of the NMRA convention online in December, so that might be something you want to look at. There's also December the Terminus show here in Ackworth that, as far as I know, they're going to be open. So something fun to do. The Golden Spike in January is iffy, but we'll see. The Asheville show has already been planned for the 26th and 27th of February. And then, of course, our model train show is going to be the 12th for setup, March 12th for setup, and then 13, 14 is the show up in Cartersville, which word out there that it's a new location and it is going to be free parking and a really nice facility. I've been up there a few times now, and it is beautiful. So it'll be a really nice environment to have a great railroad show. So, okay. Our guest tonight is...
Hey, real quick before we start,
okay.
John Stevens was going to tell everybody about the meeting on Sunday. We can unmute him. You can unmute, so... There he is.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Because the national convention was canceled over the summer, the board has scheduled the annual general membership meeting to be virtual. Will be you get an invitation. If you want to attend, send me an email to vpadmin@nmra.org, and I will be sending out the invitations later on this week. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. We do have a guest speaker tonight. His name is Chuck Jenkins, and his clinic is going to be on weeds and trees on your model railroad. So I hope he has some helpful tips for us T-scalers indoor, too. Anyway, he's from upstate of South Carolina. His interest has been in trains since he was a child. Let's see. He does, let's see, it's crazy. He's an engineer no, I'm not reading this well. He is exposed to a full-scale Fairbanks, Morse, Elko, Cooper, Bessemer, and EMD diesels as a shipboard engineer with the Coast Guard. So he's had a lot of experience with different things. We can get some pretty good, it says here that he has gotten a lot of good sound effects from his jobs too. Chris, or Chuck, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
So first off, I just want to thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for joining me tonight. We're not going to take attendance at the end of the presentation, so it's really bad, but I don't think it will be. In fact, Perry, during the summer presentation, I went through the presentation so quickly that we were at a loss for things to talk about. So, Perry, we started just talking in general about the layout, and I described some of the features online, and he said, well, that's really kind of interesting. And so afterwards I thought, well, this was actually kind of fun. I had given a presentation back in March to the Palmetto Division on this same topic and enjoyed it. And then in the summer when we had the virtual presentations, I said, why not? Replied to Walt and gave a presentation there. And so here I am this evening. So with that, let me just move this window out of the way, and I can share the content.
Yeah, and you're set up as a presenter. And one more thing that I would suggest for people after a bit is if you move your mouse around up in the top of the window where you're working or watching the meeting itself, there is a button up at the top that shows your view of the screen. And when Chuck is done with his presentation, he's going to show his workbench in front of him. So if you take your screen out of grid view and put it on participant or speaker with video view, you'll see his workbench in full size because he's going to speak from his workbench. So that'll be kind of interesting.
Okay. So, Perry, you can see the screen?
Yes. Three
Okay.
supporting actors.
Yep.
Good deal. All right. So just a little bit more about me. I was born in South Miami, Florida, went to the Coast Guard Academy and George Washington University. Been married for 34 years, 3 daughters, 1 grandson, and a grandson on the way. Working life, as was mentioned, I spent 9 years as a shipboard engineer with the Coast Guard and then 32 years in the private sector in a variety of roles in engineering, development, operations, and currently I lead a global engineering team with 6 sites in the U.S., the U.K., Holland, and Italy. Until COVID, I was doing quite a bit of travel, but that's been stopped for now. Non-working activity, gardening, home remodeling, repair, woodworking, running, reading, travel. I have more projects than I care to describe. I have a 3.5-liter BMW engine waiting to be rebuilt or reassembled. So quite a few things keep me busy. But the reason for the presentation and the meeting is talks about model railroading. And so I have a 1x8 foot shelf layout in HS scale, and as was mentioned, I've had an interest all my life, basically. A larger train set when I was little, migrated into HO during junior high and high school, and really things got put away after I went away to the academy and graduated. In recent years, I thought I knew that I wanted to get back into model railroading, and had read some articles on the web. There's a website, Carent.com. I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but it was all about micro layouts and small layouts. Primarily, I think it was European style, but just caught my interest because I don't, as I have so many other projects, I don't have time to build a large layout. So I thought, well, if I can do something that I can get done, then I would have more enjoyment. So I started doing some research. Why Georgia? My father was from Georgia, a small town called Sardis, Georgia, which is between Waynesboro and Sylvania. And Sardis was actually a coaling stop on the S&A Railroad. And he grew up in the country, and we would go there every summer to visit. And going down a dirt road and then another dirt road and go down and find the last dirt road, and you go over this little bump, and we arrived at my grandparents' house on a farm. Well, that bump turned out to be the grade for a logging railroad, the Vestal, I can't remember if it was the Vestal Lumber Company or Lumber and Manufacturing Company, but that actually, the grade ran right in front of their house. And they had Shea engines, and I have a United PFM brass Shea that my dad bought me when I was, I think, turned 15 or 16. It was a while ago, but anyhow. So I looked at the Sanborn maps to look at the different layouts and what would have been back in the 20s and the teens, and settled on a Waynesboro track pattern that I thought was interesting. It's a simple switching layout, nothing complicated. And so I picked up a Varney diesel at a train show a number of years ago. And so I've decided now to kind of alternate between the 20s and the 40s. A few industries. And I decided on a more or less a functional maintenance of way as opposed to a main line right away. DC working on an Arduino-based DCC system with JMRI. So just a couple of photos before I get to the words of the layout. And you might recognize some of those buildings as kits, Sidem kits, AHM, things from long ago. The thing with photographs is that you can see all the things that you missed, like the difference in the paint on the wood around the bottom of the buildings. The labels there, I actually printed those on a printer, and they are addresses of people I remember from visiting when we went to Georgia. So what we're going to talk about are trees and weeds and how to add some interest and variety for the model railroad. And the way I view it is that the trees and the scenery is kind of like a supporting actor. The trains, the rolling stock, the engines, those are the main actors. It's the other things help support that and create the scene, create the atmosphere. And being an engineer and being a perfectionist, I try to base it on real life. And so looked around. I've got a 20-minute commute in the morning, and so I have 20 minutes to look at what's going by. Try to avoid getting creamed on I-85. So from the safety of the parking lot where I work, here's a shot. The interesting thing here is if you look in the center, you can see that one that's kind of laying at an angle. That one right there. And the other thing to point out is that the trees, the color on the trunks, it can be white, it can be gray. In the spring and summer, it might pick up a little bit of greens, even some blacks. So it's obviously not a uniform color, and it can be, appear speckled depending on how the sunlight comes through the leaves from up above. And then along the roadside, there's, apart from the trash, there's like little briars and weeds and just viney looking things that obviously this was the spring, hadn't started coming out yet. Kudzu is a good example. And this one actually is on an entrance ramp to I-85. But the point here is that dead one in the back on the left, the limbs are very, very stubby. So they're not very fine like the one closer to the foreground. And that helps make a little bit of difference. And as you see in a few minutes, the raw materials that I use are well suited for that style of dead tree. So what I looked at was 3 different ways to make trees. There are others, but these are the 3 that I'll talk about. Purchase kit, and then sedum, which is a garden plant, to make small filler trees, and then azaleas to make dead trees. So woodland scenics. I bought a kit to make what was described as 3-inch upswept trees. And so it comes with there was 3 soft metal castings. There was like a netting that had very fine foam in it. And so the instructions were pretty much what I've got written here. Sort of clean off the flash, wash it in soap and water to get rid of any sort of mold release, prime it. In this case, what I did was I primed it with a flat gray primer, whatever I had left over in the garage from another project. It could have been Krylon, it could have been Rust-Oleum, it could have been a Valspar or something from Home Depot or Lowe's, something like that. But it was flat. And then when that dried, I would mist it with a flat black, a tan, and a white. And what I'll do this outside, and I'll put it, and you'll see some pictures of what I use, and hold the spray can probably 24 inches away. So really I'm not trying, apart from the primer, I'm not trying to coat it. I'm just trying to get a very fine mist to land on the trunk. So this is as they came out of the box. You can see that, it's white metal castings. I cleaned up a little bit of the flash, and those little forks at the end of the branches or the ends of the limbs hold the mesh system in place. At least I'm assuming that's what the intent was. So I have a piece of 1/2-inch pink foam that I put an old shopping bag on top of, and you can see I've used it quite a bit, gray, and then some browns and blacks and whites, just spraying it, misting on there. So this is the foam that came in the mesh, and the part at the top there is what was all left over and what was left in the box. So most of it came off, and that could have been, I don't know, that's the first time I've used a kit like this, and it could be that it's just a very old kit. It could be that that's how it always is. But it didn't go to waste. So I would sort of dress the casting with the mesh. In some cases, I wound up spraying it with a little bit of spray adhesive and sprinkling some more of that loose foam on it. And then also kind of tacking down or taking scissors and trimming off some of those little flyaway strands there. And even at this point, I was still able to shape the limbs, bend them, see how they suited, how I'd like to have them appear. But you can see the speckling on the main trunk, and the variation on the one on the right. Speckling on the left is pretty evident. The one on the right, you can see the variation in the one limb in the center. So moving to sedum. So sedum is a perennial. You may be familiar with it. It dies back in the winter, comes back in the spring. The flower heads and stems, I use those to create some very simple trees. They grow sort of the head of them is relatively flat, and so the tree is kind of an unusual shape to use it in its normal state. So what I'll do sometimes is break them off and make smaller trees out of the one larger stalk. I harvest them in December and January, usually after we've had a freeze or two to kill most of any insects that may have been hanging around. I'll spray it with a weak solution of bleach, depending on whether there's any mildew or something growing on it. It just helps take care of that. And then, again, the flat gray primer. After the primer, I mist it with the satin black, tans, light green, white, and then I'll use acrylic craft paints to create some accent colors on the trunks. Light spray of the adhesive, and then I'll invert it and dip it in ground foam of different colors and sizes. Generally, it's medium size or the smaller size, and a light green or a dark green. And then I'll make a hole in the layout and plant it. So here it is in the yard. So you may recognize it. And that's what it was before I just break it off. And you can see that there's different sizes, the different little limbs or that have come out from the center stalk, each in themselves can be a small tree. This is it further in the winter, and actually in the spring with the new growth coming out. So for size, reference, you can see the one second from the left is a little more than an inch tall, and then others are 8-9 inches taller or more. The one that's immediately to the left of the ruler there, it still has the flower, the dead flower buds on it. Many of the others, I've already broken those off. The interesting thing about the one on the right, the little branch that comes up to the left that's broken, trees in the natural state have branches that are broken. So the fact that it's broken on this would be very accurate on a layout. So here's that pink foam again. Sprayed it outside and mixed it with a couple of different colors, and then the adhesive and dip it. And this is one that I used the leftover from the kit, and you can see that there was still some stray fibers left in there that I eventually picked off with a pair of tweezers. So the stalks that I break off to shorten it, I use craft paint, and they can become a pile of logs, for example. Others, I'll paint them, as you can see in the background here, I'll paint them with more of a white and a gray to resemble a dead tree or a log that's been fallen for a while. And then there's deadfalls that are hanging up against another tree. They just kind of sit there waiting to break off and fall on passing motors. The little ones, they can just make smaller trees or saplings. Now this is an older photograph because some of those trees, when I started looking at it again, they were like, wait a minute, they're way too tall. They're way out of place. So I replaced them with some that are a little more height appropriate. These might be good as filler trees for an oak scale or larger, but they are too big for my HO layout. Azaleas. Many of you know we've got locally available azaleas in our yard, neighbor's yard, wherever. So I found that there's opportunities to use the dead branches or the dead pieces as dead trees. They have, many times they'll have a very interesting shape, and I said, well, why not? Let's see what it looks like. Thing that I believe is the case with azaleas that I follow is that they have to be completely dry. So if it's usually I'll find a section that's dead, and then I won't use it for probably 6 months or a year. It just gets set aside in the garage, and it'll be used next season. I remove any loose bark with a wire brush, and any little twiggy growth, I'll cut that off to create a shape that I'm looking for. In this case, I do spray it with a weak bleach solution, and then follow up with a soap and water solution in case there's any insects still on the azalea. If there's any piece that looks like it's rotted or it has any holes in it that may have had a borer or something, I'll cut that off, and if in doubt, I'll just toss it and not use that. Then the gray primer again. And with the azaleas, after the primer, I'll paint these with craft paints. Just Hobby Lobby, Michael's version, Walmart version, tans, browns, blacks, whites. I've experimented, painting like a white edge around a flat area and then in the flat area, paint that a darker, maybe a black, to be like a hole in a dead tree. And from a distance, it actually will pass for a hole in a dead tree. Drill a small hole in the bottom and insert a nail if it's from a larger plant, and otherwise I'll just use the azalea stem itself as planting on the layout. So here's a couple examples. And obviously these would be pretty large for an HO. Certainly O and above, I would think would be suitable. That's the nail. I think it's just maybe a 2-penny nail. A trusty piece of foam. And then this is with the craft paints. This photo doesn't exactly do it justice, but it was, like I said, it was an experiment. Not a huge investment. The one interesting thing is that on the bottom of this one, I experimented with some very pale greens to create a moss effect. And for this, I'll use a brush that is, to do that, I'll use a brush that has very, very stiff bristles, and maybe even bristles that are only 1/4 inch long, not a fine camel hair or sable or anything like that. Sable is what I meant. Something very stiff to create that effect. But here on the layout, it's actually a combination of an azalea in the center there with a piece of sedum leaning against it. So, as Perry and I were talking during the last presentation, we decided that this might be an interesting addition, and he had a need to create weeds in between the rails on sidings to give the impression or the illusion of sort of a not completely well-maintained line, but very, very functional. And I said, well, this is, here's how I did it. And he said, well, that's pretty cool. And as you saw in some of the early photos, I've actually got them inside between the rails and cut low enough that they don't interfere with the wheel sets or with the coupler trip pins or anything, or the locomotives themselves. So what I use are polypropylene twine. So that orange or yellow stuff that bales of pine straw get wrapped up in, and coconut fibers, which, if you've got a coconut by your back door or something like that to clean your feet on, after a while they start shedding or whole entire clumps come loose. I thought, well, maybe that might be something interesting also. Some masking tape, a wire brush, some small paint brushes, and then again some craft acrylic paints. Those are the colors. You know, yellows, browns, medium and dark green, and medium yellow, I find pretty useful here. Like this. One note is, as I was preparing for the presentation, I made sure of the materials, and I would not recommend mushroom, although it shows it on there. It's a little too gray for my taste, so it might be good for something else, but it wasn't as good for the weeds as I thought it would be. But here's one example. Now, it's not as fine and as perhaps as scale representative as some of the fibers that are available. The static grasses, they look really good. I have 8 feet of railroad and didn't want to do that. I couldn't justify it, at least not yet. So when you put all these together for the combined effects, the idea is to create an illusion, an impression, a stage of living trees, some that are leaning, some that are dead, fallen limbs, low growth, and just it's creating that scene and that effect and giving that impression. So here's an example where I've got a little bit of each of those going on. I think we saw this one a little bit earlier. On the left, on the right is the cocoa fibers. So it sets the stage, and then trees and weeds. We can get them. We can buy them. Can make them from combination natural purchase materials, and I think it just brings a little bit of interest, and it can help separate a spur and a siding from your main line trackage. Maybe a little area that hasn't seen a lawnmower or anything recently. It's all creates that effect that we're trying to achieve. There's variety everywhere in nature, and there's no right one or a wrong one. They all work. They can work. So anyway, I think that's why nature gives us the permission to create that variety, and I think that variety helps add a little bit of interest to the layouts. So with that, I will stop sharing. And we should be back pretty soon. What I'm going to do here, try to do.
Okay. And Chuck, if you'll give me just a second, if you all will, up in the main window where the meeting is running, you'll see if you'll move your mouse around, you will see a couple of little icons in the upper right-hand corner of your window. And the left one of those two will say Grid View. And if you hover over the one that says Grid View and move to the left, you all will get one of the icons that's not highlighted. It says Active Speaker. You highlight over it again. It says Active Speaker Video View. So in the audience, if you will click on that, then you will get a full screen view of Chuck's workbench while he's showing you what it is he's going to show you next. And instead of getting just a little teeny snapshot of it stuck in with everybody else in the grid view, if you just click on the active speaker view, you will get a nice view of his desktop. That's what I'm looking at right now, and I have him twiddling his thumbs very clearly, and his
they're just folded.
yeah, and the pink workbench or the pink foam on his workbench and all that stuff, because I've gone to that speaker view, and all I see is his desktop and then a little corner of me down at the bottom. So if you'll do that, you'll get a much nicer view of his desk. Okay, sorry, Chuck, go ahead.
That's all right. So, we've got a few minutes left in the meeting, and what I wanted to demonstrate was how to make some of the weeds. I've done a little bit of prep work yesterday. So what I'll do is I'll take a piece of the orange twine, and what I do is I'll take a piece of masking tape. I twist the twine, get it tight, get the fibers tight, and then I'll wrap it with masking tape. And that's all there is. And so I'll make a length like this. Then take a pair of scissors and cut them into smaller sections. Now, depending on where I want the weeds to go, if I want to put them inside the rails, then what I may do is cut them off even shorter, because I don't want them to extend very high up to the trees. So I can do it a couple ways. I could do it with a pair of wire clippers. And another way is a pair of scissors. So once I've done that, I take a wire brush, and this is those little wire brushes that, you know, Lowe's hardware store, whatever, they're $1 or $2 or something like that. And what I'll do is I'll take the brush and just do this, essentially teasing it, breaking the fibers apart and teasing them so that they look about like that. It might kind of look, it's hard to see. Let me bring this light over a little bit, see if that helps. Does that help? Maybe a little bit. I don't want to blind everybody with it. So,
Guys, thank you.
So the other thing so what I've done was, this is an example where it's a little bit bigger. Let me, no, that doesn't help. I apologize. Where I teased them out a little bit. The next step is I'll cut them in half. And so now I've got two weeds. All right. So I've got a couple of the weeds here. And the first thing I'll do is I'll put the yellow or the brown. So here's the yellow. I think it's yellow ochre. Probably butchering the pronunciation. O-C-H-R-E. And here's the brush. You can see from the side of my hand, the bristles are very short and they're very stiff. So, got a little cup of water here. Get the brush wet. Take a little dab of the yellow paint, and then just sort of paint against the grain. And if I miss some areas, it's really not a big deal. And I'll try to shape it a little bit as I'm doing this. Okay? So, a pair of tweezers are helpful, because I'm not wearing gloves. And just set that off to dry. So that's the first step I do. Now, the next step is I'll add a little bit of green to it. So this is a hunter green. But a medium green would be fine, because what I may do is, as I'm working it, I might use a little bit of green and the yellow and blend it to make a slightly lighter green. This brush is, at one point in its lifetime, it was a number 4 round brush, but it's missing quite a few of the bristles, so you can see that there's not a lot of them, but it's enough to get us started. So, a little bit of green. And I'll just hit it lightly. Because what I've found, or what I've noticed, is that quite often plants, as grass, Johnson grass, and things like this start to grow, they'll send out, they may start, the different stalks will have a different color based on how old they are. And so if I don't cover all of the yellow, it's really not a big deal. It's in a different stage of its growth cycle. So this was an example from yesterday. Here's another one that's probably a little more orange. So take some green and the yellow, mix them together. Set that aside to dry. And then finally, on the tips of a few of the stalks, I'll take a pure yellow. This one happens to be a medium yellow, or it says real yellow. And what I believe it does is give the illusion of perhaps sunlight shining through something up above and landing irregularly on the weeds. So that's the twine. The cocoa fibers, as you can see, these are just loose, random things. The thing that's nice about these is that they're already brown. And so the first step is more or less done. They've got a curve to them, so I just sort of twist them around. And with this, I'll take a piece of painter's tape, just kind of pinch it together and twist it. There's still time to move them around a little bit. But then after this, scissors or my wire cutters, and just cut the bottom off. And the reason I do that is because when I plant it on the layout, I'll take a drill, small drill bit, drill a hole, tweezers, and plant it. And that can have a dead one, or, again, same colors as before. But here I can start with the greens. And just hit a few of them, or more than a few, whatever effect I'm going after, or whatever effect you want to go after. So this was one from yesterday. I would add more green to it, and then some yellows. But this would be suitable for a larger scale, because it would. I mean, this is more like a pampas grass, or I could imagine that if you had a few of these stuck together with some of these wild-looking twine, I mean, it could be a briar or any sort of overgrown area. So that's what I have. So I appreciate you all. And if there's any questions, be happy to answer them.
Yeah, sorry, let me unmute myself and then bring the chat back. First of the questions that popped up was, oops, I lost the chat. Was, how do you attach those to the railroad once you got one of your twine or floor mat, doormat plants done? How do you attach it to the railroad besides drilling a hole?
That's all I do.
Oh.
And literally that's all I do. The layout that I built it uses a sound deadening board. It's not Humasote, but it's a wood fiber. It's not very dense, but it's called sound deadening board.
Mm-hmm.
And even that, but you can see this. The thing that this item right here, that's a piece of foam that I just used a metal rod to push a hole in it, or a nail would work. That's all I use. So no glue required.
The next one was more of a comment than a question. Another suggestion for making nice trees was hydrangea.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming I pronounced that correctly. But you must use the paniculated version because they have conical flowers, which I guess works. I don't know. I don't think I've ever much sure. I think I have hydrangeas in my yard. I'm not a plant person.
I'm pretty sure they would work. I've seen them. I don't have those in our yard. I have in a couple areas on the layout. I've used Nandina. Sometimes it's called heavenly bamboo. But the flowers they then have red berries, and it's a conical shape. And when you get rid of the berries, what's left could pass for a pine tree once it's decorated appropriately. I made the mistake of decorating mine by spraying it with spray adhesive and then dropping the foam on top of it, and it attached itself to everything as opposed to just the tips of the little branches. But it's buried in the layout, and maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. It's there. It's one of those things that I'll get to one of these days, or not.
Yeah, I get it. I haven't seen any more questions pop up into the chat window yet. I will thank you, because that was interesting. The weed part was cool, and I went out and found myself some of that slime, so I'm going to have to paint some of my own trees. I will turn this back over to Sally now, and she'll probably have more of a formal thank you for you. But thanks, that was interesting. And there's been a couple of comments about that as well in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you all enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. In a way, I do enjoy the presentations and getting to meet, another division. So thank you all.
Thank you.
I want to thank you as well, Chuck. It was very interesting, and I can see being able to do G-scale items with the suggestions you made. So we've got a very large indoor G-scale in our basement, so it needs some love. So I think we'll get it there. But anyway, just thank you for your time, and we hope you follow us. We do this second Tuesday of every month.
Cool. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chuck.
Well, did you have anything else tonight?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and stay tuned. Keep watching the website, keep watching Facebook. That's where we make last-minute changes, try to update things. So if you really will pay close attention to the website and on the scheduling and things like that, we try to keep things as close to updated as we can. One thing I can guarantee is we have been changing things a lot lately, so but we're trying to settle in with some scheduling things, but it all takes a little bit. And you're welcome to invite the Palmetto Division to join us anytime if they want to join in with us sometime up here. So we'd love to have you. And y'all are going to be the host for the convention in SCR next year, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So I'll pass it along. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So to everybody tonight, thank you for attending. I can't really say drive home safely, but most of you already have. So I'm glad y'all joined in tonight. And see you here next month. And everybody join in again. We had a good crowd tonight. So good to see everybody.
Good night now.
Anybody have any comments or anything? Anybody?
Good night, all.
Good night.
All right, everybody. Have a good evening. Thank you. Thank you, Barry.
One chance I have to see my wife today.
take those down,